Awesome. Well, first, thank you for doing this.
My
I
pleasure.
we were talking off air for a second, but I I appreciate your work a lot for a lot of reasons. But I think the one that kind of comes through is there's a visceral nature to it that I think almost no matter what you're telling, like it's the amount that the characters are supposed to feel, the audience is meant to feel. And I think when it really works, and for me, Lone Survivor and Patriots Day really were the two especially where I'm just like, holy crap. And obviously Friday Night Lights, but that's a slightly different vibe. But you're as invested as the characters. And those are movies that are so easy for that not to be the case. There's a way blander version of both of those movies where everyone's dad watches it on TNT and that's it. But you don't make those movies.
I try not to.
I don't know. That's the
I
thing.
put I put Deepwater Horizon in that list also,
Oh yeah. Which
personally.
which is I remember is so interesting to me because I had interviewed JC Chandor for
Uh,
my one year, and he talked about my next movie is going to be this Deepwater Horizon movie. I'm kind of shocked they're letting me make it. Turns out they didn't. Uh, and he walks away and you pick it up. And I remember everyone being like kind of not sure what to think about it because it went from, oh, is this like a drama to, oh shit, is Mark Wahlberg gonna shoot oil? And I imagine for you that's also fun to be like, okay, they don't know what I'm making, so I get to kind of like do this a little under the radar.
a little bit, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And then even just stuff you don't direct, like with the Showtime show. What do you what makes something a project that you want to take on? Because you've been working a while. You have the ability to say no, which is not
Yeah.
everyone has that.
Yeah. I mean, well, specifically with Boys in Blue, I went to college a while ago in St. Paul, Minnesota, which is
Yeah.
the twin city to Minneapolis. And when George Floyd was killed, I remember at first not knowing where it was happening. I was just watching,
Yeah.
the video, and I don't even know what the word is, beyond horrified and
Yeah.
sickened watching that. And then I heard it was in Minneapolis, and I was there was an extra level of confusion. I mean, I was confused at what I was seeing when Derek Chauvin killed George Floyd. I
Yeah.
couldn't believe it was real. And then when I heard it was in Minneapolis, which is basically where I went to college, the Minneapolis that I knew then was such a peaceful place.
Yeah.
Prince was just coming up, and we used to go see Prince concerts at a club called First Avenue, which was kind of the most diverse crowd I'd ever seen in terms of Hispanic, African American, white. There was a large Vietnamese population in Minneapolis, and everybody just got along. Minneapolis was sort of the nice city. And when I heard that, that this is where Floyd was killed, like I think many people, and certainly as a filmmaker, I wanted to present some kind of creative response. I couldn't figure out what that would be. I had a couple of different ideas that I was tossing around. And then I read this article in the New York Times about the Minneapolis North High School football
Yeah.
program, coached by Minneapolis Police Department officers, many of whom worked with Derek Chauvin in the neighborhood where George Floyd was killed. That got me interested. Obviously, I have a connection to football.
Yeah.
And I've also worked, have some relationship with different law enforcement organizations. I thought that kind of fit into my world. Flew out to Minneapolis, met Officer Adams, the head coach of that program. Thought it would be fascinating to spend a season with that team. The season after the Floyd killing. It was an incredible experience. We just had no idea that the star of our show, a 15-year-old, incredibly talented quarterback, Deshaun Hill, would be murdered 3 days before we wrapped shooting, and that kind of obviously made everything a little more intense, and
Right.
certainly the stressors facing that community more immediate.
Oh yeah, because you never, whether it's narrative, documentary, no matter what you do, you don't really know what the end result's going to be. You start with one goal. If everything goes according to plan, here's the thing in my head, and you can probably say that it's never what you end up making. It can't be. But
Correct.
something like that is so beyond what you would expect that in a way it's obviously it's awful, but because you can never even comprehend of it, I'm sure when it comes time to think about it in terms of the program as opposed to just getting over the humanity aspect, it's it's so beyond what you would ever have thought about. You just kind of take it as it is.
Yes. Yes. When I mean, there's so many, powerful memories I have and moments that I experienced making this show. But one of the most lit, penetrating was when I was at Deshaun Hill's memorial service, and I was sitting up in the balcony, and there were a couple thousand people in this giant auditorium, and it was an open coffin, and he was presented on stage in front of everyone, and I was looking at from up above down at this service and at Deshaun Hill in his coffin, and something felt familiar, and I was staring, and I picked up my phone and I searched the George Floyd Memorial.
Sure.
And Deshaun Hill's body was in the exact spot, in the exact room that George Floyd's body was in. And, the same curtains and the same screen. And I couldn't process that. I still can't. I don't know how to contextualize it and to make sense of that. That, we were brought there in large part because of one man, and the person who we became closest to during the filming ended up dead in the exact same spot. And as you say, that's something that obviously you don't even know how to begin planning for. Things are good. When you're filming a football season, you know that you can't predict how it's going to end. I've learned that, and we all have, as anyone that follows football. But to have it go down like this was gut-wrenching, very powerful, confusing, and I still don't know exactly how to make sense of all of it.
And you don't have control. If you're on the set, first of all, everything's fake. Second of all, ostensibly you have control. Things can go wrong, and if there's no money, I can't make the money appear. But when there's a problem, you have control. You can say yes, no, you can move things around, you can do your best to fix a problem. You're sitting there and it's life. There's nothing you can do. You can just capture it or choose whether you capture it or not. So it's I'm sure also just a powerless feeling when, kind of the perk of being a director is you kind of get all the power. You get to be
Right.
the set.
I was in Toronto filming something else when I got a call. We were, like I said, 3 days out from the season was over. We had filmed Deshaun Hill. We had 3 days left of shooting. The third to last day, we filmed Deshaun Hill out on a date with his girlfriend, and that's in the show, talking about his plans for the future, trying to get a kiss, eating fried calamari. He didn't get the kiss either. He sort of got the kiss. She gave him a kiss on the cheek, but she didn't want her grandmother to see it. So
we've been there. Many of us have been there.
Same here.
Yeah.
But and the day after that, I was in Toronto. We were about to wrap up the show, and I got a call that Deshaun Hill had been murdered.
Yeah.
And I used to lightly joke with some of the police that are in our film that you guys need to do something a little more dramatic, because the reality of policing is not that much happens.
No.
And I would every once in a while call some of the cops in the show and say, can't you get into a car chase or something, go into a burning building or get into a gunfight. I don't know, something dramatic. I was joking. And I thought the producer was making a really bad joke when he called me and said Deshaun Hill had been murdered. I realized he wasn't joking, got on a plane, flew down to Minneapolis, and we had a crew of 30 people who'd been with this team and Deshaun Hill for 8 months. And they had really been almost embraced and absorbed by the Minneapolis North community. And they were all in a hotel conference room where we were basing when I got there. And they were in shock. And someone said, "What do we do?"
Yeah.
To your point of having no control. And I said, "We tell the story. I don't know what else we can do." We were invited by this community to bear witness to this, 9-month period of time. And this occurred within those 9 months. And it was our creative, I don't know if responsibility is the right word, but the only, plan of operation I could think of is we don't offer, we can't make sense of this.
Yeah.
You can't make sense of a 15-year-old honor roll student, elite quarterback, good kid getting murdered for no reason. That, no, we're not going to try and make sense of it. We will present it. We will show it first and foremost to Deshaun Hill's family, which we did, and we will show it to the community and listen to them, and then we will decide how we put it into the film. But that's basically all that we did.
Right.
It's just a really, really sad experience, and it was for all of us.
It's not the experience you wanted to make. It's not the story that, the police wanted to tell. It's not the story the school wanted. Nobody wanted that to be the story. And that's what happens every time there's one of these tragedies. It's not the story anyone wants to tell. Other people try to tell a different story because there has to be a right and a wrong. And like you said, this is a good kid. This is people, everyone involved wanted good. And this was meant to be this positive thing. And I have a very weird experience because I live in New York City. So I have a different experience with police than other people do. I freely admit it. I actually used to be one. I quit in the academy 3 days in. So I get that it's not an easy job, but also, you'd think it would be easy to avoid killing people. But at the same time, people like to make, it into this was a good person. This was a bad person. Like you said, that I'm just telling the story. And how could you think anything else except this is a tragedy?
Yes, and one of the things that I, certainly came away with a stronger appreciation of is just the reality of how hard it is to live in at certain areas of our country, right? Which is something we all know and we hear about. And when we were down there and we recorded it in the show, be driving along and shots fired, or we'd hear about a shooting that happened 2 days ago. And everyone, the police, the community, everybody involved is talking about how dangerous it is. And we hear that and you understand that intellectually. When Deshaun Hill was killed, the visceral reality of the dangers that this particular community and so many others are facing hit in a much harder way. I understand it now. Living in many communities, being poor in certain communities in this country is really fucking dangerous.
Which is absurd. That's you're more likely to die because you make less money than someone else is absurd. But because like to your point, like you comprehend like, okay, this place is more dangerous than that place. Everyone feels like they live in a relatively safe area, but we all have our things where it's late at night and you're walking and you hear something near you, like, oh, okay, I'm fine. But your brain is worried, but that's not really a danger here. Whereas there are parts of the country where you wouldn't do that just because it's
absolutely not. And that's what, if you look at the first scene of Boys in Blue, the first scene is Tuesday Hill, Deshaun Hill's mother, in their home with Deshaun Hill Sr. and the kids. And Tuesday Hill is saying, and I was there, I worry the most about him leaving school, going to the bus, and driving home. Yeah. That's the part that I can't control. That's what I worry about. And I remember that was always the beginning of our show. Yeah. And we edited that in long before Deshaun Hill, who was killed leaving school, walking to the bus. Like I saw that dozens of times, but that scene, and it never really landed that she's not joking.
Yeah.
She's really, really scared that her son's going to get killed walking to the bus. And I never really believed that.
Yeah.
I heard it and I okay. And then I heard that Deshaun Hill was killed walking to the bus after school.
It's such a different muscle also for you because you've done movies based on real life. You've depicted real events. You've depicted real people dying, but you're doing it in a way where you're like, this isn't real. It's meant to honor the person. It's meant to, in a way, uplift by the end.
And yes, and that's what I said. Like when I did Lone Survivor, I met with 17 parents of dead Navy SEALs. I did Patriots Day. I met with parents of dead children who were killed by shrapnel at the Boston Marathon bombing on Boylston Street. Same with Deepwater Horizon. This was and yes, that's real. And I certainly had nothing but respect and wanted so much to do right by those families. That was a big motivator for me. And that this was another level.
Oh yeah,
You know,
it's one thing to talk to a family member and go, I'm not going to do wrong by you. I'm making something meant to entertain. And yes, Mark Wahlberg's in it, but don't worry. Like it's gonna make you'll hopefully feel good at the end of it. You'll feel like this is building to something. Here, you can only really say like, I'm gonna show what happened, and hopefully people feel the way that we feel. But you can't manipulate it in a way. Like you could, with the examples you gave, if a family member had a particular complaint or an issue, you can work around it. You can massage things in a way, and okay, we'll turn three people into one, so that we can do things like that. You can't change this. It's
yes.
literally reality.
Yes, and I think that the experience that I had, because you're sort of right. You
Yeah,
can't composite character Mike Murphy, who was the lieutenant of the platoon that was ambushed that Taylor Kitsch played. I have to look Dan Murphy, his father, who's an extremely powerful, present, and intelligent man, and his mother, who's still a Gold Star mom and and I have to say, like, here's the movie.
yeah.
Do you feel personally, and look, if they say I hate it,
We can,
Universal's still
yeah,
going to release that movie because they've spent this was so I'm always sensitive of it. And with Deshaun Hill, all I could do was put it together in a way that I think pays respect to Deshaun Hill, who I truly admire, show it to his family, and hope that they say go forward.
yeah, exactly.
And what Deshaun Hill's parents said specifically that really hit me was, yes, go forward. And this happens to young men and women all over the country every day, and no one ever hears about it. And
Exactly.
the only reason that people might know Deshaun Hill's name and that we're talking about Deshaun Hill, you and I now, is because we happen to be there.
Yeah.
She said, this is important for everyone to understand that, yes, I love my son, but this is happening every day and nobody covers it. You're lucky if it's a miracle if certainly national news doesn't cover young men being killed for no reason on streets. And she said, I want this out there, A, for people to remember my son, and B, for people to think about all the other sons that nobody even hears about. And she said, go. And, we went.
Yeah. Which I think is I think her words are a great way to sort of cap off the conversation, because that's what it's what you can hope for, is that people watch it and one, remember him, and two, think about how often this happens, and think about the fact that you don't hear about it. If you hear about someone from your high school, you hear about that they did, oh, the Jets just drafted a guy who went to my high school. So you hear about that, but you don't hear about, oh, someone died. You don't hear about that because there's no money to be made. But in telling the story, you found a way to, one, I think, still tell the story you were trying to tell, but also tell this, I think we can all agree, like, far more important story of, like, this is something that has happened, can happen, and still happens. And if the cameras weren't there, would have been just would have not existed for the majority of humanity. It just wouldn't have existed to them.
And that it really is happening. And just on a side note, I don't know if you remember the character of Kashmir, the linebacker who is foster child, great kid. He just got out of the hospital last week. He was shot 3 times leaving school. He's going to live,
Yeah.
but he almost didn't. And, I called away the head coach and he said, this is what it is. This is our life. Two of the stars of our show were critically shot. One died, and one just got out of the hospital. And so it is real.
Yeah, for sure. And I think as we wrap up, it's just the way that you capture things are emphasize that it's real. And I think that's very it's essential to the story, because if you tried to make it stylized, I think this would fall so flat. And if
Yeah.
you didn't make it as like it's supposed to be uplifting, I think when you set out to make it, it was supposed to be, look at this like success, and it still feels that way. But now you watch it with the undercurrent of knowing the tragedy, and in a way, it's life. It's the balancing act of life. So I think you should be very proud. I think it stands very tall with the work that we were talking about earlier.
I appreciate that very much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I'm very eager to see what you do next. I think this is an interesting thing, because I think it opens you up to, like, I couldn't guess what your next project will be, because it could literally be anything now. Uh-oh. He looks to the left. I know what it is.
Corporate drug dealers,
Uh-oh. Yeah.
pharmaceutical industry,
Yeah, that actually is that fits for you. Oh yeah. I
corporate drug dealers, billionaires that make money putting heroin in little pills and trying to get it out to as many people as they can.
I will be eager to see it. I hope people are, keep watching this and continue to watch. And I think people go back to look at the films, because, there's not a lot of filmmakers who make the type of film that you make, and make it with the level of care. So whether they,
Appreciate it.
however they turn out, I think you can tell that there's a stamp on them, and that means something.
I really appreciate it coming from a Jets fan.
I mean, listen, I don't know happiness, so I got to find it.
I wish you a great I truly wish you a great season. I hope you deliver.
If he cuts down the ayahuasca, maybe we'll be fine.
Ayahuasca in the silent rooms.
That's true. What a strange man. As long as he throws a football, I don't care at this point.
All right, brother. Have a great day.
Take care, man. Bye.